Lead a life of entrepreneurial freedom with insights from successful creatives, entrepreneurs, and investors. Discover how they overcame challenges and turned their biggest dreams into reality. They share their personal success playbook so you can build the business and life you truly want. Welcome to Passion Millionaire, the podcast by Robert Roth. Rock and roll your dreams.
Welcome to today's episode of the Passion Millionaire Podcast. I'm super excited again. We got some new topic going. Something that is of interest if you have a company that is already, let's call it at least mid 5 figures, better 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, really big companies, and you are looking to hire the right people to grow your team, especially executives. And Phil, our today's guest, he specializes in executive headhunting, not only since yesterday, but he's doing this since 2 decades as a professional that has worked in really big corporations. And now he's doing this in the free world, so to speak, still for big corporations, but also for those smaller companies in the size that I've just mentioned. Tons of experience, more than 1,400 hires, which I find quite exciting. So let's learn from Phil. Phil Boland, welcome. Please reintroduce yourself the way we need to get to know you.
Robert, thanks so much for having me and the beautiful warm intro. Hello, folks. I'm Phil Boland. I am, as Robert said, a 20-year headhunter. I've worked in several methods of recruiting, but now I do executive recruiting. I have my own firm called Eagle Executive Search. We specialize in directors, VPs, and C-level searches. We operate mainly within the financial services, insurance, and technology verticals. We do get business outside of that, but those are kind of our honey holes. In terms of the way we work, we're all contingent. We do that intentionally. We are not a retainer-based company. We believe our work shines through that. We'd love to have a conversation. We're kind of a low risk entry if you're having trouble hiring. So it's pretty easy to test us out and see what we're all about.
Sounds exciting. Yeah, great to have you. And you're in the DC suburbs area. And for some of your clients, you said that matters, makes a difference. So good to know also for everybody who's listening. But you work internationally and you have done projects across the US and even outside the US. So super curious. Like I'm also always interested to learn something. And I mean, you have a lot of expertise, executive headhunting. So I'd be curious, what do you think many people might get wrong, even if they have hired executives before? Like, what have you observed that can be done better by a professional that does only this one thing like you?
So executive headhunting is a lot about respecting people's time. In the world of recruiting, as a recruiter, your job is to size someone up and see if they're a good fit for an opportunity. So presumably in a lot of cases, the more time you spend with someone, the better picture you'll have of them, right? So, but in executive headhunting, that kind of doesn't work because executives don't have time. A lot of my recruiting conversations are over text. They're, 9 p.m. phone conversations. They're, a 6 a.m. Zoom meeting. It's not the typical, hour, half hour interviews, during a lunch break or something. You really have to be kind of ultra flexible to kind of get into these people's calendar. And the actual screening part of it is not as big as a factor as it is the negotiation factor. Like I find at lower level entry level recruiting, experience recruiting, you're focusing heavily on, can this person do the job? Or do they have the skills for the job? Do they have the right culture, attitude for the organization? In the executive world, you still do that, but executives are usually more impressive. They have a lot more accolades. They've done a lot more. And in a lot of cases, I think the skills to be a good executive recruiter are much more negotiation based than like selling someone good on an opportunity as opposed to talking to 5 or 10 people that could be good and figuring out who the right one is, if that makes sense. I didn't hear that last question. I think you might be muted, Robert.
This negotiation component that you just mentioned, I'm curious, like how would that look like in reality?
So let's say I have a CFO role, okay? And it's at a bank in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a mid-sized bank, okay? That's a pretty clear-cut role. They have a couple things they probably want and a couple, opinion-based things that they might like to see in the hire. But if you look at the job market practically, there's probably 200 or 300 people in the country that can do that job. There's not thousands, right? So then you find all 200, you send them all a note. Let's say 60 are interested.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, you're not really screening people. You're going through the negotiation of what does their long-term comp incentives look like? What is the base salary versus the equity? What kind of team am I going to be able to bring with me? Are there any new positions underneath my org once I get hired? How is the team organized inside? Do I report to the CEO or do I report to the COO?
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, you're just explaining how it's set up. In other cases, you're kind of actively negotiating on the side of the company
Mm-hmm.
where they might, like, for instance, I had a situation one time with a CTO. We were recruiting him to a financial organization. He was very interested, but the architecture group was underneath him, but the development and engineering shop was not. And he made that a serious point of contention. He's like, I can't move unless that's under me. And the negotiations went back and forth, and the company ended up doing that. But you're not just filling a role against a person. Like, you find a person, and then sometimes you're actively talking to the company to change the role in real time to fit the person they want. It's much more of a back and forth negotiation instead of this is the job, not him kind of thing.
Quite interesting. And if you are doing this with all your experience, I believe there is a difference compared to, let's say, a company doing it that is lacking all of those experience. Like, what would you say is the difference there? Like, how could you succeed better? Maybe bring the better fits, maybe bring even fits that wouldn't have been onboarded at all. What's the difference there?
I think, I hate to play the experience card, but like when you've seen enough hiring efforts, like things tend to get put in buckets. Like you can notice trends, you can notice, human behavior and how it kind of shakes out naturally with people. Like, I mean, I've hired 1,400 people, as you said earlier, but I've probably interviewed 30 or 40,000 people.
Wow.
I've
That's a crazy amount of interviews.
Yeah, like 20 years doing it every day, it adds up, right? So like,
Yep.
but once you see kind of not the whole market, but a good chunk of the market, it gives you a really good picture of how people are going to react to certain conversations, how you need to word things to get their opinion without offending them. There's also an element of don't ask, don't get. Like a lot of junior recruiters that I used to have on my teams in corporate, like they wouldn't ask those questions. They would just say, oh, sorry, it's not set up that way. They wouldn't even think to go back and say, this guy's really good, but this is his only problem. Do you guys want to move on that or no? So it's kind of treating it comes down to treating the opportunity, the search, as like a business conversation as opposed to like finding the candidate.
Okay, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And would you say, is there a difference also between you have been employed a long time ago, right, by corporations and doing that, and now you're doing that as an external partner? Is there maybe even an advantage to doing it like that?
Sure. Because I've seen behind the curtain. There's a lot of agency folks that don't understand the corporate budget cycle, or they don't understand, the level of approval you need to get to go external to an agency, or how billing can change in first quarter versus fourth quarter. And just like all kind of the random idiosyncrasies of corporate life and how that affects hiring and people that want to go outside with a consultant. Like I've kind of seen I used to be the gatekeeper against guys like me at corporate. And like, it shows you a lot of, I got to see every tactic they used to get in. I got to see, the ones that were successful, what they were doing, how often they were meeting with managers, if they focused on managers or candidates more. And, a lot of it just comes down to relationships and like being a good person and like following through on your word and like not being a liar. A lot of it's just being a good human, but like it's hard to kind of conceptualize it until you've kind of seen it wide scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, quite interesting. And then maybe this depends on the size of the company. Curious to hear, like, if, let's say there's a company, maybe we can answer this from two ends, like smaller company, let's call it maybe 7-figure company versus a company that is much bigger, 8 or 9-figure company, for example. Having the need for an executive role to fill ASAP, not getting it fixed. What is the cost?
What is
like
the
real
cost?
cost to the company? Yeah.
Well, the fee cost to me is 20%, which I think is very reasonable. But the actual
that's not what I mean.
cost,
What I mean is like, what's the cost for the company? Like if they can't
Right.
fill the role and then things are not getting done, and maybe a couple failed hires and that kind of stuff. I think yeah.
Well, I'll even make it simpler than that. I mean, like when I was in corporate, I was on a team of 10 recruiters before I got into management. And there was a period of about 6 months where 2 of them quit at the same time, and they spent 6 months backfilling those 2. So those 6 months were awful for me. Like I had a 20% higher workload. I worked another hour or 2 every evening. I was more stressed and more annoyed generally. And the company didn't really do anything wrong to me. My workload just increased, and it was no fault of my own or no fault of theirs really. But like, if that continued longer, I might have quit earlier. Like it's just a general aggravation for your people if you have a need that's not met. I would say, for a comparison, it's the same thing as having an awful employee that you won't fire. If you have a team cancer in your office, or someone that just hates the organization or doesn't work hard or is, getting everybody against the boss, like that's just as damaging. I mean, it just kind of shows your people what you put a high priority on. And if you're not putting a high priority on people, they are people.
Yep. And then how long does it take until the damage is getting bigger and bigger in that, let's say, this exact situation that you have, right?
Usually the 3 to 6 month mark is where it gets, because, a normal recruiting process at a big corporate company is going to be a couple months, probably 2 or 3. Once it goes beyond that, that's when people start getting a little angry about it. I mean, if you're if you got a position open for 6 months, I mean, that's a big chunk of time that people are doing someone else's job. And, it's not a week or two. Imagine hating going to work for 6 months straight. It eats at you,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So what is your way to compress this timeline to actually find the right executive as quickly as possible?
We're just super direct. Like in today's world, I think job postings are completely dead. Like I don't post jobs on my LinkedIn.
Oh.
I don't advertise jobs on any social media at all. When I get a role, if I got a role right now, the first thing I would do is I have two methods really. I use LinkedIn Recruiter like most recruiters. I also will build custom search engines that will search parts of the internet that aren't maybe mapped the same way. And I'll use those two combined to build a list of people that could do the job. I hit them all up. And then I set appointments with everyone who's interested. I try to write a really engaging and really descriptive JD in the message to them. And I try to customize it to them to a certain point. And, I can do and then I'll send a message out and then they get back to me and meet with me. But those first few steps are like 4 hours, maybe 3 hours. And then once I get the messages out, people will meet with me over the next 4 or 5 days, and then I present the best couple. I mean, it takes about a week. At higher executive level, it usually takes 2 or 3 weeks just from people meeting with me with their calendar. But like, I find like in the world of advertising, like that work path is dead. I think it's just AI and easy apply and all these tools that make it easier to apply are just destroying internal HR companies. They're getting so many resumes they can't handle it, and sometimes they go to guys like me, which I don't mind. But I think it's the direct approach, direct sourcing to direct people, telling them why they're awesome, telling them why this job's awesome for you. They feel better. You feel good. You feel good when you're recruited. It's better than chasing something down.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, man. Direct method is always what I go with.
That's quite interesting. Yeah. So, like, no, I wouldn't have guessed that you are not doing any job posts at all. You just reach out directly to them, and then like what's usually, let's say, the timeline after that? Let's say you found your top candidates. You present them to the company, and then so that has taken maybe 3 weeks, something like that.
Yep.
What's the timeline afterwards? Like usually in that pool of executives that you're presenting, is there the one that is being hired and that also sticks, or does it take a second round sometimes? And how would those cases be different? So let us know how this would play out typically.
Yeah, there's a huge range of kind of what happens from there. The first thing that's going to dictate the range is how well do I know the client? How long have I been working with the client? How well does the client know me? Because, there's a lot of cases where I'll get a new client. They give me my first job and maybe they're super busy and they give me like 5-minute phone call with a couple bullet points about what the job is and just go find somebody quick. Like I hit on those too, but like a lot of cases with something like that, I might send 3 candidates over and they're like, oh, well, none of these guys have this cert. Like, did you, and something they forgot to tell me or something, and I'll retool and do it again. But typically, like if it's a client I know well or a position I've worked with them before, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I send over 3 to 5 candidates. They pick 2 or 3 they like. They set up interviews. That usually takes, at the executive level, that usually takes like a month because they're usually meeting 3-4 people, 3-4 teams, really. Then we get to the negotiation offer process, which some companies will run that through me. I like them when they do because I'm very good at it. Some companies like to do it themselves, which I get it. It's their brand. That's fine. But it's pretty straightforward after that. Every interview process is custom. Every offer process is custom. It kind of depends on the client directly.
Interesting. And do you also
Mhm.
assist those companies with optimizing their interviewing process part? Like once you hand the executives over, or is it just they do whatever they do and then hopefully that's the best result? Or how would that look like?
So I can, and I have done that, but I don't do that much. It's not like a
Okay.
core marketing thing that I put out there, but I'm trained in interview methodology. I've built, interview packets hundreds of times when I was in corporate. I know how to interview people fairly well. Um,
Mm,
people are Clients can be a little defensive in that arena, b-
okay.
only because so I'll speak from my own experience. When I
Yeah.
was in corporate and I would deal with guys like me on the outside,
Mhm.
they would offer that, or they would ask for, what is the interview process like? Can we see some of the questions so we can prepare them? You know, a lot of clients aren't going to want you, the agency, to know what the interview is specifically because they don't want you to over prep your client and have them maybe falsely overrepresent themselves. So usually I'm kind of intentionally kept in the dark on certain aspects of the interview process. Um, but again, that depends on the client. Some more trusting ones will tell me more details about what's going on. It's all about how long I've been working with them and how well they know me, usually.
Mhm. Okay, that's interesting. And do you think sometimes they think they are doing a high quality job, uh, but really they aren't? And if okay, you're nodding. So how would a company actually be able to figure out if they are really doing a high quality job or not? And if yes, awesome, thumbs up, we're gonna do it ourselves. But if no, and now we have just discovered that we should improve there
Mhm.
because we're gonna be doing good for the company, and we basically should get advice from somebody like you. What would be the questions they could go through for themselves, or what would they be looking for in order to see, okay, we are doing a great job or not?
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, opinions are everybody's got an opinion, right? The thing with interview questions is it's a very subjective science. There is a science to it, but there's very little hugely universally agreed upon. There's different camps that believe different things. Um, I'm there's a lot of there's a lot of talk in the world about kind of experiential interviewing, or or where a lot of the questions kind of focus around like, tell us about a time you did X, or you faced adversity and you came through it, or talk about a time you did XYZ. And like most interview questions are based around either the skills for the job, usually in technical stuff, and then experiential, what have you done in your last few jobs? We'll apply that to this. And there's nothing, conceptually wrong with that, but I just think they're very, very, they've been used nonstop for 30 years. Everyone knows what they are.
Mm,
Every Reddit and Google forum has 50 answers for them. Like when you ask those questions, you get fake rehearsed answers, I think. I think it's way more
okay.
valuable to ask people questions about the job they're applying for and more like um, perspective type questions of like, hey, you're interviewing for a program management job here at Amazon. This program handles all the logistics for our toy division. What are some of the big problems you would think, we have, or, kind there's very little questioning today that asks about the job they're applying for and what they think about the job they are potentially walking into. Um, Ask them about an upcoming project. Ask them about an upcoming initiative. Ask them about how they would approach the big thing you're doing right now. Ask
Mhm.
like pretend they're a consultant or a current employee and ask them about your current setup without revealing too much. Like, that's going to tell you a lot more than tell us about a time you had a difficult coworker and you made it nicer. Like, who cares? Like, I mean, I want to hire nice people, but like that story doesn't help me, you know? I think the focus of interviewing is not like the human psychology focus of interviewing is misplaced, I think. I think we need to focus more on what do you think of this? How would you approach this? What's your stance on this? If you were given this situation, what would you do? As opposed to tell me your 5 best stories from your last job, you know?
I think that's a great piece of learning that you just dropped for us. Awesome. It makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, like, here's a good example. So like whenever I interviewed entry-level people or people kind of lower positions on my team, the first question I always asked them was, who was your best boss ever and who was your worst boss ever? And tell me why. I treat it as a softball question, kind of make things comfortable, easy question to answer. I don't care who their boss was. What I care about is why that was their best boss and why that was their worst boss, because that's going to tell me what they care about at work. That's going to tell me what's going to make them annoyed. That's going to tell me what gets them energized. So like first question just kind of sets up, okay, this person doesn't like being micromanaged. They love being given freedom, you know, something to, you know, a real thing that they're probably answering honestly on.
Yeah, wow. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's amazing. Makes total sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, since you are finding those executives
Mm-hmm.
or executives headhunting,
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that at least some of them, when you're finding them, are still in a position in some company,
Most of
right?
them.
Most of them. So therefore, there is a little bit of tension, I could imagine, maybe
Mm-hmm.
for themselves, maybe not knowing what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe then also when they make a decision and then with the company they're with, in case they decide to switch, or maybe also not knowing what should I do now, the headhunter, what if my company figures this out while I'm still not decided. Risks, for the executive, risks also maybe for the company who is hiring you to find the executives. Let's
Sure.
talk about that. What are those risks and typical scenarios and thoughts that are going on for everybody in this situation, including you?
Oh, yeah. So the number one is PR risk. Like,
Mhm.
and hiring for a job is not a bad thing for any company in most cases. Certain executive jobs that are posted, especially when you have multiple executive jobs posted at the same time, can give the customer base or the market a bad feeling. I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
I had a client a couple years back who had a big service outage and a big IT problem, and they fired their CIO, CTO, and CISO the same month. So
Wow.
all 3 of those positions are open, and they're using me for it. So I'm meeting with the COO about it, and he wants to use every resource and advertise it everywhere, and and said, Tony, what do you think our customers are going to think if we post a CIO, a CISO, and a CTO on the same day?
Yep. Something's falling apart.
Yeah, all the IT guys in the organization are going to start looking, is what's going to happen. So don't post it anywhere. Just tell your friends that might have don't tell the world. It's the same, whoever needs to know needs to know. Not everyone needs to know. That's the first thing. Another big risk for me is, there's always, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the client I am working with is not in agreement about using me. Now I'll explain what I mean. So I had a client probably a year and a half ago. He was a CFO hiring for like a treasurer position, and he was not happy with his own internal HR. So he felt that they were trying to recruit for it and they weren't doing a good job. So he wanted to go to me. HR disagreed. He obviously disagreed with HR. So the first month of the process, HR is kind of watching me with a fine tooth comb, looking for any reason for me to screw up. Just waiting to axe me for anything they can. It's not always like that. A lot of times I work with HR directly and we're friends, and I came from HR. I'm a good guy, trust me. But that's just kind of how it plays out sometimes, and I do the best I can to stay out of internal corporate politics of another company. You just, be polite, be respectful, be humble, answer your questions and move on. But PR risk, there can be some like internal tension risk like that I just mentioned. Operational risk or reputational risk. I mean, because let's say you have a very important position and you give it to a recruiter who's maybe not that sharp or not that senior or doesn't really fully understand what you're looking for. They could burn up your candidate base. They could go through, if they're talking to 200 people that are qualified and some are interested and they're misrepresenting it or giving the wrong ranges or saying different focuses and 10 guys who would have been good say, oh yeah, I don't want to do that. They could blow up your position. There's a lot of ways it can go, but most of the risks tie back to kind of the reputation of the person that's representing you. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Do they understand it? Do they respect it? Or do they understand PR and who needs to know and who doesn't? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, quite interesting. So you're helping mitigate all of those risks. Like, because you have seen what happens in all of those situations, I assume. Right. So what about the executive, that are still in a job? Like, what's that situation usually? And how does it resolve?
It depends on how high they are usually. When they're, it's interesting. Working with C-level folks, they don't care. They'll email me from their company email. A lot of times they'll have their assistant set something up with me.
Wow.
Like
what's going on?
Yeah, I mean it's odd to deal with. And then I'll deal with like an SVP and he's, on the phone in his stairwell, talking to me in secret. And, don't send me any emails. Don't, we can't be connected on LinkedIn. Like, I don't want anyone to know about this. So I get the full range, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Would have not guessed that.
Yeah. And they tend to like, kind of act that way by function. So like if I talk to a chief of sales or a head of sales, they're very open. They tell me all the drama of their company. They tell me why they hate their boss and, stuff about their marriage. And, they're very, very, very open and we'll talk about anything. Where like if I deal with a controller or a, maybe a risk-based person,
yeah.
A lot of two-word answers. I got to ask a lot of questions to get the same info. People's personalities end up sifting them into jobs sometimes. And, you can kind of predict a little bit how something's going to go based on someone's personality at times. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Quite interesting. And let's say somebody decides to actually make the switch. Like, what makes an executive make or take the new offer, basically? Like, how does that usually look like, this negotiation? Like, are they coming at you with like, okay, you have mentioned a little bit, like, I need to have this in place, right? But is it usually that they want to step up whatever they have in salary compensation packages by a lot? Or is it usually more like, okay, kind of the same, maybe a little bit better, but that they're just happy to have a different environment or different challenge going on? Or what would be the typical scenario there?
So like why are some executives successful when they transition? Or
yeah, and why would they switch? And how does that switch also look like? I mean, they need to tell their employer at some point, etc.
Yeah. Well, it's typically not a 2-week notice. A
Mhm.
lot of times they have to give a 4-week notice or a 6-week notice. Some really big companies, they ask for like months of notice, like if you're in a C-level position, because they have to do, long-term corporate planning. A lot of it is tied around timing of bonus cycles. Um,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of most high-end executives at big companies get an annual bonus or a quarterly bonus or some kind of something on top of their base salary.
Mhm.
And a lot of the timing, negotiation, logistics around the offer start time period is based on that. So like if I have an executive leaving a bank and he gets a significant bonus in April, but he got the offer today, he doesn't want to leave till April. I mean, that's just the deal. So if the other company wants him before that, they got to pay for the bonus or part of the bonus, or they got to negotiate something else, or they got it. So like once you get to the offer stage, then it becomes kind of a complex logistics exercise of, okay, how much notice do you have to give? When is your bonus cycle timeout? You have a long-term incentive of equity stock that you're going to be vested in 4 months, and then a second set at 12 months. It gets kind of complex realizing what they're walking away from and like what's the best scenario for them to land at the new one. So like one thing I've noticed, that that process is annoying for both sides. The company doesn't like it, the candidate doesn't like it. Both are trying to stay as whole as they can. Like usually the messier that is, the worse the executive start out is. It kind of shows you a lot of the attitude of the company of how flexible are they, how much do they want this to work, how much do you want them to come, how much do they want you to appease them, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, that that can be kind of an interesting thing to watch, go back and forth.
Mhm. I can
And
imagine.
yeah, another aspect is are they bringing people with them? So like when you at the C level and the EVP, SVP level, most of the time, if you're doing it at a big organization, those people have hundreds of people underneath them. And in a lot of cases, they'll say, hey, I've got 3 guys that will come with me. This guy's, head of engineering, this guy's head of test, or whatever it is. And usually when when executives bring folks with them to kind of champion their cause, that typically does very well because they're bringing like a whole culture with them, and they have advocates backing up their vision lower down the ranks. They've got that's that's always been a very good kind of tactic.
Mhm.
It's not always practical. You can't always do that, but
Yeah.
it works. But yeah, man, it can go a lot of ways. It gets crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Wow, that's quite interesting insight as well. Like basically the world of executive headhunting just opened up thanks to all the stories that you have told, your
Sure.
experience that you have brought to us. And before we hop to the last question that I would have prepared for you, I'd be curious: is there anything that would be, good to know additionally to what you have explained, and that was a missing piece? That would be the place.
I don't know, Robert. I don't have a good soundbite right now. I'm a human recruiter. I'm not all AI. I am
Yep.
I care very much about touching both sides of the process and making sure everyone is happy and human and well covered. And we we're old school customer service wise. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, makes total sense, and that's probably also reason for your success. I mean, you have
I hope so.
left the safe world, or what many think is the safe world, right, of being employed, You have your own business established successfully, which I find, so congratulations. I'm always super excited for everybody who achieved that.
Thanks
And
so
therefore,
much.
yeah, 100%. So, and I think that statement just made you super trustworthy. Like for me, like I personally also care about that a lot. I think it makes it different. Like there are some people who care only, or it looks like they care only about the transactional value of whatever business transaction, right? And then there are people who, of course, you need to care about that transactional value. Otherwise, I mean, you go broke, right?
That's
And
right.
but this, human component, I believe it builds out a certain culture, and it's a match for a certain type of, in your case, executive, and a certain type of company that you work with. So I find that quite exciting that
Love.
you work like this. So
Thanks so
last
much.
question for you. I'd be curious, what is the biggest mistake that a company that is hiring for executive is making that you maybe see all the time, and what is the best tip for it?
The biggest mistake I see is candidates trying to convince the recruiter. The recruiter
Mhm.
basically has no power. Like I could tell you 500 stories of when I had a candidate I loved more than anything and the manager didn't care. Um, you're not trying to convince the recruiter. You're trying to convince the hiring manager. The recruiter, in most cases, will happily pass your resume along unless you're way, underqualified or something. But like, don't waste your time on the recruiter. They can only help you so much. Your other one was best advice.
Yeah, best fix for that, if there's a fix.
Best fix for that.
Yeah, maybe there's none, because scenario is not a fit for this second part of the question, I guess, or is there?
I don't know if there is a fit for that. Probably should have given you a different example. Yeah, there might not be a fit for that one because
Yeah,
hiring
that's
managers always got a choice.
but that's an interesting insight you're leaving us with for the end. Cool.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. And if somebody wants to work with you, no matter if executive, interested in finding the right position, or hiring company, or maybe soon hiring company, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm on all the normal channels. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got eagleexecutivesearch.com if you want to check me out. And my email is phil@eagleexecutivesearch.com. I'm pretty easy. I'm pretty low key. Set a meeting. I'll tell you all about it.
Sounds great. We also link that in the show notes. So again, thank you so much. Really appreciated all your insights that you left us with. See you soon.
Yeah. Thanks a bunch, Robert.
Go to rockandrollyourdreams.com/podcast.